Hello, Lambrick. So this week for our missional update video, we have something a little bit different. Ross Harris, who is a member of our Missional Engagement Team, so the MET, did an interview earlier this week with Clayton Dougan, who is one of Lambrick's missional partners. And he has been telling people about Jesus for a lifetime and lives here in Victoria and worships at Lambrick. And in the video, Clayton talks about his history with Capernwray and how he's been involved there, and also reflects on evangelism through the years and what it means to be a missionary. And in part two of the video, Clayton interviews Ross, and Ross talks about how his passion for mission kind of was first kindled, and what it means to be a member of the MET now. And then right at the very end of the video, there's a little text screen, which is how we can be praying for Clayton and for Isabel, his wife, in these days, and how we can be supporting him and lifting him up in prayer. So I hope you enjoy the video. It's a little bit longer than the usual videos, but it's absolute treasure, absolute gold, and I hope you enjoy.
So people may or may not know that you have had a long involvement with an organization called Capernwray. I was wondering, and I believe not only are you a teacher at Capernwray's, but you're also on the board of Capernwray Canada. Could you tell us a little bit about Capernwray and its purpose and what you'd like the people at Lambrick to know about Capernwray?
I'd be delighted. Yeah, the Capernwray ministry, the word Capernwray goes back to the original centre. It all comes under the banner of what's called Torchbearers International. Now, Torchbearers International was founded by the late Major Ian Thomas, who was a major in the British Army during the war. And through that, he was brought in contact with a number of German young people and was given the opportunity to share the word of God with them. He began to teach them. And out of that, I'm cutting a very long story short right now, but out of that, the whole ministry of Torchbearers was born. And he and his wife bought a property in an amazing way. God provided the property that is now Capernwray Hall near Manchester in Carnforth, right on the edge of the English Lake District in England. And so that was commenced right after the war. And by the way, his widow is still alive, and in comparatively recent years, she's written a book called Go a Little Further. And it tells you the whole story of the Torchbearer movement. But as it has grown over the years, there are now I think it's 25 or 26 centres throughout the world of Capernwray centres. And the idea of each centre is that they have a Bible school, a year-long course in Bible school, where young people, and sometimes not so young people, get a good grounding in the Word of God and given a foundation to help them to continue study in the future. And also in those centres, they do summer conferences, men's conferences, family holiday weeks, all that kind of, women's conferences, all that kind of thing. And so it's a varied ministry, but it's wonderful how God has used it. And for me, if I may tell you, I started, my involvement with Capernwray started at Capernwray Hall in England in 1973, when I would go every other year to speak in their summer program. And then when we came to Canada in 1984, I made it my business to go and meet Charlie Fordham, the director of Capernwray Harbour on Thetis Island. And he very graciously invited me to teach in the Bible school. And I've been doing that every year as a guest teacher since 1985. So I'm very heavily involved. And as you said, I now have the privilege of being a director on the board that oversees Torchbearers Capernwray Canada Society, which is Capernwray Harbour and Thetis Island and the Capernwray Centre in Quebec. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Big nutshell, mind.
So Clayton, we've recently done a survey of regular attendees at at the church. And one of the interesting questions we asked and some got interesting feedback was about how each of them views themselves as a missionary. And I know you've had a chance to quickly review the responses. What would your comment be on the individuals of the church, regular attendees, and their role as missionaries?
Well, my immediate response, when most people think about missionaries, they think about somebody who's going abroad somewhere. And not very often do we think of the people we meet every day, and that we're actually in a mission field right on our doorstep here. And the fact of that God can use us just to share the gospel with individuals that we're meeting every day. Now, that does not mean, of course, you're going around preaching to everybody that you meet, but it means that your walk with God is so real and personal, and you're excited about knowing Jesus. You're excited about being a Christian, therefore you want other people to know about it as well. And so as you're being prayerful about that and asking the Lord to lead you, he can bring people into your life that you can share with. And it's amazing how that will happen.
What are some opening lines that you like to use in broaching the subject with somebody that you perceive God has brought it to your attention?
Well, I find, to be quite honest, I find it differs all the time. I don't get into some kind of rut over a thing like this. It depends who I'm talking to. That kind of thing. I mean, for example, I quite recently met a guy who was obviously from a Muslim background, and I just simply asked him, was he a practicing Muslim? And all the time I'm praying, Lord, give me an opportunity to witness to this guy. And right out of the blue, in answer to my question, he said, not really. He said, I'm thinking about Jesus, as a matter of fact. So that was what I would call a God-given opportunity. I was very happy to tell him some more,
So, Clayton, you've been a full-time evangelist in Canada and internationally for many, many years. Is that still a legitimate model for a missionary, or have things changed much over the years as a full-time evangelist?
Yeah, things have changed a bit over the years. Certainly they have. I mean, I because I'm getting older now, I don't travel so much as I once did. But a story comes to my mind right now. A friend of mine who was very prominent in Canada in leadership in the area of evangelism, he said to me one time, he said, if you want to renew your confidence in the fact that you're called to be an evangelist, go preach the gospel in third world countries. And that started off a thing in my life that was quite amazing, actually. Out of that conversation, I ended up going to places like the Philippines, several African countries, different places like that. And I found that in those places, people are much more responsive to the gospel than here. We got everything. We don't need God most of the time. At least that's what we think. And so, people are not so open to listening to the simple message about God's love and that Jesus died for them, etc.
Yeah, I would certainly echo that. One of the reasons I'm such a strong supporter of short-term missions for young people and young adults is they get a chance to see the gospel at work in a different culture, and then they're much abler when they come home to break down some of the cultural barriers about sharing the gospel.
And I can certainly testify to that too, Ross, because I mean, I've been involved in leadership in taking teams in the past to third world countries and having young people with us and giving them the opportunity to share the gospel. And it is so exciting to see them come alive when they see that people are actually listening to them and responding to them. That they're being used by God to share the gospel with other people. Very exciting. You're heavily involved, Ross, in the work of MET here at Lambrick Park Church. But I know you've got a lot of experience in serving God in other capacities. And I first met you when you were you captain of the Anastasis?
So back in the early 1980s,
Yeah.
my wife and I were involved with the Anastasis, but we actually first served on an operation mobilization ship called the MV Doulos.
That's right.
And we went and served for 5 years as a family. We took 2 kids with us, 2 babies with us, and came home with 3 kids. And we spent a year working in African countries.
Yeah.
And we spent a couple of years in Asia.
Yeah.
And then finally, we spent a year in the Pacific Islands, and I was the executive officer, the chief officer of the ship.
Yeah. Then this is obviously colors your whole attitude towards mission work. And the other thing that's close to your heart is the Alpha course. Can you tell us a little bit about how you came to get involved in that?
So I came to know Jesus at Camp Emmerdine at the age of 10. And I went on to be involved with Camp Emmerdine for many years. And I was on the board of Camp Emmerdine when we purchased and developed the Missachi Lake property. And that was the start of my interest in my burden for souls. A person at Camp Emmerdine named Roy Hawes transferred his burden for souls to me.
Yeah.
And I saw the work of OM ships in preaching the gospel and distributing Bibles and so on as an outgrowth of that. And then when I eventually was not healthy enough to be at sea anymore, I still had the burden for souls, and I found Alpha was a wonderful way in the Canadian cultural context to do evangelism. And so I've been involved with Alpha for a decade now. And I just love the way people of all backgrounds and all religions can come. And we just completed an Alpha up at UVic, which was wonderfully attended, and in fact was a partnership between a Christian club at UVic, a church in Oak Bay, and ourselves. So yeah, I'm very excited about the Alpha. And more recently, I've been excited about home alphas, where you have about 12 to 14 people at home alphas, as opposed to having to have a volunteer staff of dozens to hold something huge at the church. I like that as well.
That is so good. And therefore, Ross, you bring to MET your inborn excitement about sharing the gospel with whoever. And I take it that a big part of your MET involvement is to give other people that same vision.
Absolutely. And yet, there's been a change in missions over the last 10 or 15 years that has definitely been embraced by MET, which I've come to understand a little better. And the missionaries I support have had a move in this direction, and that is that along with the gospel, missionaries are also meeting needs in the area of social justice in terms of people's needs for food and medicine and so on. So that has completed my view of missions because of my work on the missions committee. I've learned all about that, and the traditional mission organizations I support, like OM ships, they have made that shift as well to combine evangelism with helping the whole person and for social justice. So yeah, that's quite that really defines my role at MET.
Yeah, therefore, it seems to me, Ross, we all need to realize that MET is a very important part of the fabric of Lambrick Park Church. How many people are involved in MET at the moment?
We have
roles.
We have about 6 members of MET, and we meet monthly, and our meetings are very long and very detailed. And we also meet by email and phone calls throughout the month. And we produce a report every month, which we send to the staff and the board. And we manage a significant part of the Lambrick's budget with our missions effort. Lambrick um, provides over $70,000 a year in support of our mission partners, individual missionaries, and our neighborhood outreaches. And so we take that responsibility to steward that money on behalf of the board very, very carefully after they've approved our budget for a year.
That seems to me to lead to a very important question. We're all sitting here in this congregation today listening to what you're saying about MET, and we're maybe saying to ourselves, well, what has that got to do with me? How do I fit into all of that?
And what we found in the survey was that as people mature in their faith, they get a deeper sense of purpose for their own mission. But there's lots of people that are younger people and young adults that are a little unclear as what their role as a missionary is. And maybe you would have some comments on that, Clayton.
Yeah, and I mean, in the sense of, I would want to say, what more could MET do to, make the younger generation more aware?
So in response to our survey, we have a communication plan that we're putting into place, which Val, I can't remember, Val Johnson is leading.
Yeah.
And we are going to update the website. It's going to be really exciting. And we're going to have videos of all our missionaries and all our organizations on there. And we're going to have a new jobs board. And the jobs board will be where there's opportunities for you to serve short, medium, and long term with any of our partners, including our individual missionaries, whether you have to raise support or some of the jobs may even be paid jobs. And we're going to start to move towards advertising. Here's an opportunity for you in our congregation to participate with one of our partners. An example is there's a program where you can go onto the Logos Hope for 2 months, be exposed to young adults from around the world who are committing themselves to learning how to become missionaries and what is involved in cross-cultural missions. So we'll be advertising jobs like that.
That's really exciting.